Okay, again, in your book, you allude to the native view of property and how they assigned and regulated materials, items, and land, and their view of land. Could you expand a little bit upon the native view of how they looked at all of these issues?
Well, the land was, of course, a spiritual value to them as their home base, their home territories. The adjacent waters were certainly related to this. They used the timbers to make their magnificent houses. They were burial places as well. So there was an integration of the First Nations there with the land and the seas. Everything was inclusive. There was no ethic of land control. It was just, in essence, theirs. But they had a fine idea of property. And James Cook, when he arrives in 1778, he said he'd never in all his 3 voyages in the Pacific met a people who had such a high-minded idea of property as these people do. And he said every blade of grass they wanted compensation for. Now, when the first encounter occurs with Cook, there's not this commercial exchange, but they realize, the Indigenous people realize after a while that, you know, there's something to be made here, and they should pay for it. You know, if they're going to have grass for their goats and their cattle on board ship, no, this is a McCook. This is this is an exchange, right? So they were good about a concept of ownership of what was on the land. As to boundaries, they tended to use mountains as their perimeters. And in terms of navigation, Meares Island, the name of Meares Island, when translated, says, "We steer by the mountains." And Meares Island is a prominent island, as you know, and there's Mount Colnett and Lone Cone. Those are the 2 large mountains there. And they were beacons, if you will, or points of reference is a better way of putting it, so that if you were sailing from offshore, you would be able to see them first, and you would line them up in a certain way, and then you would make one of the 2 entrances into Clayoquot Sound by that way. So they had a concept of land in terms of how to navigate, how to get home. And it's important because it's an extraordinarily stormy coast, and lots of fog there from time to time, and other difficulties. The currents and tidal rips going through Port Cox or Tofino Harbor are something to be only experienced, I tell you, a near-run thing.
Sounds like there's another book there.
Well,